How many of you, when you go to work in the morning, feel that way? You really look forward. Gosh, I'm so lucky. I'm looking forward to see the people or whatever I'm doing. Put your hands up. That is remarkable. I really mean that. That is one of the best indicators of health. It's so interesting when I ask that same question of my students, and they are 22 years of age, or patients, many of them, in a group like this, 15% of the hands go up. And for the others, it's like, oh shit, another day. It's like their life is a treadmill. And when your life is a treadmill, where you cannot get off, it suppresses your immune system. And the only way you can get off is by getting sick or dying. We forget that. And remember, genetics is only a piece of it, as was said earlier by the comment on the side, 25%. The way we always do it, some of us were born with a fiat body. You know, it's not too good, but when we nurture it very well, we can drive for thousands and thousands of miles. And others were born with a Mercedes body. But then we drive it through potholes, we go off the road, and it breaks down very quickly. And that is what this self-behavior is about. I want to go back to this, so I will start with one practice I highly recommend. I'll let people slowly filter in. It's always challenging when you come right after a break, because it's so much more fun to talk to others. And so, one of the practices I really recommend for each of you, or to work with your clients, and you can do it at any age, is to start doing an inventory or a daily log of energy drains, energy gains. At home and at work, you write down what are drains, what are gains. A drain can be cooking. Once again, for your family, a drain can be cleaning the bathroom. A drain can be talking to a certain relative or seeing a certain client. A gain can be cooking. Notice they can be different. The key is to be truly honest to yourself. You keep this log in detail. Keep a log for days. Write down to each drain, however bizarre they may be, and each gain. And then after a week, you look back over that log and you see, gosh, what can I do to reduce one of those type of drains? So if I don't like to clean the bathroom, I get my spouse to do it. I make a deal. I'll cook for you. Or I hire somebody, or I keep the bathroom more dirty. You know, but notice I'm taking charge of my reducing the drain, and equally, I'm building into increasing gain. And I know for me, for example, exercise is clearly a gain. Whenever I exercise, I feel better. I always tell my students and my clients, if you need to tell me something very bad and I would get irritated, have me first exercise. Thereafter, nothing seems to bother me for a moment. And so if I want to gain energy, I do some exercise. Just like yesterday after the workshop, we went to the beach and we went swimming among the hundreds of fish. It was just gorgeous. And then you feel, So what are you going to do? How many like this idea of doing this exercise? Now the next question is, how many of you are going to do it? Are you really willing to do it? Then do me a favor. Here is my email. Send me a note, what you did and how it changed your life. Because it's clear with patients and non-patients, healthy people, those who really do it, they are being honest. They're looking at the mirror of life and they're saying, I want to work, I want to choose to make the life I live meaningful. And not just be on a treadmill. Okay? And maybe the way I can think about that, here, energy gains, drains, laughing on a phone, and I can tell one personally. I have a sister. I love her in a way. Yes, I do. But when I talk to her, it's like with my best of my intent, my energy drains out. Is that... You really don't want it. I mean, what I have learned, I have recognized that. I know she likes my contact back and forth. And I also don't want to not be connected. But now what I do is I always initiate the telephone call. That gives me control. And 2, I set an alarm clock. After 10 minutes, I have an appointment. I'm not being facetious. So we have a collegial, lovely, caring relationship, and I can cope with that because my skills aren't good enough yet. I'm still learning, okay? But it makes no difference. It means doing it in action, that's all. Or the humorous way I can do, and there are many. Remember, change where you have control, and then you have to accept where you have no control. We know all these trite things, okay? Move toward acceptance is a process. This may give the image of people going home from work on Fridays. That's a very nice video clip. I like it. A little softer. Softer. And here, going back to work on Monday. Lights off still. And did you know that Monday is essentially a Black Monday? You have the highest cardiac deaths Monday. So if you survive Monday, you do well. Okay? But now, let me be more serious. Look at the person next to you. Get acquainted. It can be... And then remember that one of you will get cancer. And now look at 3 of you, form groups of 3 almost, and then statistically, 1 out of 3 will die of cancer. Cancer is a disease as we get older at times. However, most people will die with cancer, not because of cancer. 3% of men will die of prostate cancer, but like more than 20% will live a happy life with prostate cancer. Notice a big distinction. So yes, as we get older, cancer tends to increase. And eventually we'll have to die of something, that's my guess. And I'm pragmatic, as a biologist. However, there is a segment where we can contribute to mobilize our health. And that's the piece I'm intrigued in. So I'll talk about that for a moment, or look at that. And remember, it used to be very simple about cancer. You had a carcinogenic agent like smoking. It caused lung cancer. Is that familiar on the left? In fact, that's not how it is. 20% of people who have lung cancer, 80% of people who have lung cancer smoked. 20% never smoked. 80% of people who smoke never get lung cancer. So life is more complex. Okay, so it's now much more, and I want to underline that. You have cancer, whatever that is. It is your lifestyle, it's your development, your epigenetics, how you live, whether you have carcinogenic agents with you, etc. And so it's really that kind of preventative component. And if you think of cancer cells, as you've been sitting here this whole day, you have produced thousands of cancer cells. Congratulations. However, you have a great immune system, and your immune system recognizes these abnormal cells. The dendritic cells go all around you. That cell isn't good. It activates the killer T cells, and it kills those aberrant cells. And so, if you can have this balance, it will work better. Some cases we get cancer because of too much radiation. We have doubled the radiation load in the last 20 years for all of us, not because of the atmospheric atomic testing, but because of medical procedures. Numerous patients get more radiation than is allowed by a nuclear worker for medical testing. We forget that sometimes. There are many. And then all the toxins. We spray the foods with pesticides. The farmyards, the herbicides, all those are carcinogenic. Most of them are carcinogenic. And we have, I can make this whole list. I'm not going to do it completely. It's sort of depressing in a way because then I don't want to eat anything anymore. It's food coloring, it's preservatives, it's antibiotics, it is heavy metals, hormone dysregulators. Every one of you has a little plastic bottle and drank water out of it because you want to stay you don't want to dehydrate. That plastic does get absorbed in the water, and in most cases it acts as like estrogen. It's a hormone dysregulator. So get glass water bottles. And I'm pragmatic. Then it's the exposure to viruses. It's how well your immune system works. And then the question is, to what extent is cancer genetic? Or how much does genetics is a risk factor? Whenever you fill out any form, they ask you about your family history. Am I right? Your sister, your mother. But how predictive is genetics? How would you study it? Any idea? How would you really know? Probably the best rule would be studying, it's a genetic link, is really you study identical twins. And that study has been done. So as you can see here, they studied 45,000 pairs of identical twins. And if one identical twin had cancer, his or her sibling had less than a 10% chance of getting the same disease. Yes, there is a slight risk, but the genetics is a very low factor. Is that somewhat clear? Now, there are unique cancers like BRCA1 and BRCA2, which are very rare, where the risk is much higher. But most, it's very low. So it's the expression of the genes potentially in the environment, okay? And there are so many questions. As the men in the group, should you have a routine prostate screening, PSA test? For the women in the group, should you have a routine mammogram? Okay, I'm just being out. And these are very controversial issues, and this is financial as well, because there's lots of the best money centers for a hospital are mammogram centers. No, I'm being pragmatic, and what I'm saying is different than if you are a special risk. If you have BRCA1 or BRCA2, don't listen to me at this point for that part. If you have some other things are occurring, check it out. But for pure routine of people who don't really have complaints, this is what the data looks like. Oh, if you're intrigued, we wrote a book one time. That's an ad. So I want to be sure. But if you're intrigued, we did have a book we wrote a few years ago about non-toxic treatments. Okay, but should I do it? One, testing for basically healthy people often leads to overdiagnoses and treatment when it's not necessary. We'll always find something wrong. At least 20% of any of the mammogram or of biopsies where it looks like there is cancer, if you did nothing, it would just fade away. Now, emotionally, that's very difficult to deal with, I realize. Okay? It may encourage treatment for a disease that may not cause the disease. Very difficult, I realize. And then sometimes the test is positive when it isn't. For any of the women who have had a pap smear, how many of you may know women who have had a pap smear and had a positive test? Is that familiar? And then 6 months later it went away, or the next test it wasn't there. Pap smears are notoriously inaccurate. All women will, on the average in their lifespan, will get at least 1 or 2 positive tests without ever being positive. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're a young woman and you get that test, then all of a sudden what happens to your worry and fear when you have not been well educated about this? Oh my God, I'm going to have cervical cancer. I'm going to have surgery. I'll never have kids. Nobody will love me. the panic. So that's part of good diagnostics, okay? It may change it. And those thoughts suppress your immune system and hope, possibly, okay? Just to summarize the data, there's no evidence at this moment, that's the consensus at this stage, that regular pap smear testing does not save lives. So you don't do better. So I no longer take paps. I don't take paps. I never took those yet. PSA, specific, antigens. The data is just very clear that there's no benefit at this moment. Okay. However, if you do see the abnormal testing or high rate, then you move into an invasive approach. Now, if you have problems in this area, do get tested. Okay? For mammograms, I wish I could say that mammograms really are helpful. The data is not there. And so I want to show the data comes from many different studies now. However, this is one of the early ones. And it's an interesting one because this is, you all speak Dutch, ik ook. So ik zou dit in Hollands kunnen praten, but I'll speak in English. And people looked at what happened. Well, in the Netherlands started early, doing their like the American medical system in a way. They started early doing mammograms, very early, and they showed eloquently the death rate of breast cancer went down. Very powerful effect. There was only one problem. Belgium, that's another country, a little different, very far away. They were not as advanced. They started mammograms 10 years later. And this is what the data looks like. For the Dutch, it's the blue line. It goes very nicely down. You see here they start testing. And notice how nice it goes. People get tested. Mammograms are done. My gosh, they discovered the death rate goes down. The Belgians, either for whatever reason, the Flemish, or, notice the green of Flanders. They never did testing. It goes down as well till much later. They start testing. It makes no difference. Okay? All of a sudden it says, it made no difference. There are now many other studies that support that. So keep in mind, for prevention, if there's no symptoms, no problems, there's no data to support mammograms. It's a very tough one to make that statement, and if you're a woman, it's very difficult to do that. But the data just isn't there. If mammograms were useful, and if early diagnostics was useful, which you see here, this is the end result. This is the very disturbing slide. That's just less than a year and a half ago. I'll get there yet if I press the right buttons. I have to learn. This is the number people get at these blue lines. The average curve is the diagnostic, breast cancer diagnostics. It's going up. Can you see it? Because you get early mammograms. If you are successful in early diagnosis, you would expect the death rate to go down. There's no going down, I'm sorry, and that's very sad to say. That suggests that all you're getting are false positives, or you identify people whose breast cancer would not get larger. Or the ones who you do get, it makes no difference because the cancer may metastasize somewhere else. I happen to pick on breast cancer because the data is very well done. Okay? I'm not saying don't be tested, but be a bit more skeptical. Focus on where you have control. Does that make sense? And some of those at least we contribute to our lifestyle. Okay, let me look at lifestyle and cancer. This is looking at the nursing study, and then we look at the male health professionals. Okay, they did this for years. And what the data shows of this is that between 20 to 40 of cancer cases, or half the cancer deaths, are preventable. And you apply this to other less educated populations in the United States, the data says between 40 and 70% is your lifestyle pattern that can be prevented. So I would say work on that. That's where we have control. Mobilize the health, mobilize your immune system, and avoid exposure substances that are carcinogenic, which we ingest all the time. Okay? So let me look at it in this way. Let me give it as a case example. Oh, well, let me do one more part about lifestyle. I am not recommending that you adopt this religion. However, the data is clear that Mormons in the United States have 3/4 and sometimes half the cancer rate compared to all other Americans in the United States. It isn't because they're Mormon, from my perspective. It's because they have no tobacco, no alcohol, they have a nutritious diet, and they have a very strong social support from their church. And if you have those factors, your health will be significantly better. It goes across all different groups. Let me give now a case example of a young woman, okay, who I happen to work with. Only by phone, by the way. She's a friend of my daughter's. So my daughter called and said her close girlfriend has had, you can see abnormal pap smear since the age of 16. Has been abnormal all the time. It has gotten worse. It's not always a predictor, but she had the cervical intraepithelial neoplasma, grade 3. She also has HPV. She has a virus. She's had multiple biopsies. Eventually, they froze the area to take it away. Then they would say, "You'll be better." And then a year later, it still didn't go away. It's unbelievably discouraging for the person. Just like if cancer returns a second time, it's mild. Then she got it abnormal again. And so, and she was frustrated because the invasive techniques for her did not cure her. Does that make sense? And the question is, what could she do? So my daughter knows that we wrote this book, and said, would I talk to the young woman? And I said, sure. So on the telephone call, I talked to her, listened to her story, and she was more hopeless. She was doing all the right things already. She was eating well. She was running marathons all the time. That's perfect exercise. And so as I listened to her, and then she also said, well, I want to heal myself. What would you recommend? And then I remembered there is light at the end of the tunnel. The first thing she needed, which was so clear on the phone, which I think any healthcare professional knows as well, or of any mother would know, is she needed to feel safe. And when you have a diagnosis like this, you don't feel safe. Your life is threatened. So I talked to her. I said, yes, I know a number of patients or students and patients who have had this, and they have gotten better. So we provided hope. Not that we can say you will get better, because I can't promise that. But I can provide hope, or one can provide hope. If you do the following, you may mobilize yourself. And by telling stories, we did that. And then the question was, how do you enhance your immune system? You're doing pretty good. You're eating organic food. Well, since I've worked with Olympic athletes, I know that if you work too hard physically, that is a physical stress and your immune system is suppressed. Many athletes after competition or even before competition get sick. It's a positive stress excessively. I told her, no more triathlons. And she agreed. I gave her rationale as a biologist for that, so she couldn't do any triathlons, no more marathons. But she could still exercise for fun and go dancing and do many other things. And then I said, you cannot eat any sugar, because cancer cells just love sugar. And if you look at all alternative techniques where diet is a cofactor, the commonality is no sugar, no simple carbohydrates, often no much commercial processed foods. I'm being simple. So for her, no sugar, since people had shown, Hamburg had shown in 1920s that cancer cells grow from that. And then, how do you deal with the worry in your brain? So then we taught her the technique of Every time she started to worry, at that moment she became aware of the worry, to use that to trigger a self-healing imagery that she could imagine. It's like for her a special healing light going through that would support her immune system and kill the cancer cells. It changed. So now she used to worry to make it more positive felt sense and time out. And then she did self-healing visualization. And then you need to focus on what gives you joy and meaning in the world. You remember that exercise we started with? Energy drain? She did it. And she really did it, which is different. She lived in LA, and then she decided LA was not. Out of that, she decided she was not a Southern California girl. And she went back to Chicago. I don't know why. Anybody who has been in Chicago, forget it. But she did. So she acted out her dream. What is it she really wanted to do? That takes massive courage. Because usually it's, what is our dream? Well, I want to do this, but I can't make money on it, but my parents won't like it, but she started to do that. Well, she moved to Chicago, and then that next year, she had the first normal pap smear. Her pap smear had been normal ever since that time. What is even more shocking to me, which I did not know, and she was totally surprised, she used to have a nut allergy and really reacted very badly to that. And one time during the year, she ate some nuts and she didn't react. So she went back to the doctor, they did a test, and her nut allergy had disappeared. Which is really, her immune system had become competent. It may be very rare. She's totally healthy and she just got married. So at least, maybe that's similar to the man who said, be in love with lots of women. But she's living the dream of her life. Okay? Now let's look at more group studies for this. On male prostate cancer, that's the work by Dean Ornish at UCSF. Fairly good. They take 93 men with confirmed prostate cancer. They split the group up randomly. Half get no treatment, half get treatment. The treatment group, very simple in a way. You meet in a group. Social support, the most important quality. You go on a more vegetarian diet, organic food, non-processed foods. They took some extra antioxidants. They exercised. Notice it keeps coming back, and more, and often in a group. They practice stress management, mindfulness, and breathing. It's really somewhat unimportant what you do. They did this in a group for many weeks. And now, let's look at a year later. The control group. 6 of the men got worse and had to get chemotherapy and radiation. Their PSA levels went up. The treatment group, no one got sick. Their PSA went down on the average. And they also tested the cells, how active the killer T cells were, and they were more capable of destroying cancer cells. This really suggests that doing lifestyle changes can promote health. Now let me do one more study. This is probably the most important study I know of in cancer, showing that even when you're quite sick, there is hope. It's by Anderson, Barbara Anderson's study. It's an 11-year follow-up. That's really rare. It's now really more. It's about 14 years. Okay? And what they did is, when they first did this study, they took 227 women who had breast cancer. They split the group randomly in half, and half the group got group treatment. They met in a group, they shared, they discussed stuff, they were given guidelines, they got social support. The other half did not. And after the first year, the study was failed. I must point it out. There was no difference. It was a total waste. But look at the outcome. Notice when you do self-care, it's a slow process. And sometimes the cancer cells are really multiplying rapidly. Possibly, it takes a long time. So if you really look at this curve, what is interesting, here they ended it. Here the study ended, and these people are followed up for up to 160 months. That's a long time. 14 years. And notice the first year, first 20 months, there was no difference in the outcome. And you would get really discouraged if you were the patient. But the women kept doing it. To their surprise, because they got no more instructions, they were followed for all this time, and slowly over time, the two groups changed. Notice? The survival was significantly higher for the ones who were in that group than the ones who had to treat who were the controls. So it means it's a challenge for the long term. It's not magic, it's changing your life, if I think about it. Okay? And remember, the group is critical. Don't do it alone. Loneliness kills. So many people I know who have cancer don't want to tell it to anybody else because they're ashamed of themselves. They're super autonomous. The key is, when you're sick, you're part of a community. You need help. You want support. It's not bad. It's an opportunity for you to receive support, because some other time you can give someone else support. Life is a give and take. Are you giving to others? And are you capable of receiving from others? Health is both. And then, those who have spiritual connections, the data is quite good that if you have a spiritual meaning in your life, it's meaning again, hope and meaning, purpose, you do better. This is in small cell lung cancer. Those who have high spiritual values have much better survival than those who don't. So keep that in mind. Ask, where are you? Okay? It's really what Grandma always said. Eat and sleep and have exercise. Did I say eat? But I'm not asking yet what. Okay? Be kind and helpful. Have some fun. You've already heard that before. Get some fresh air. Do things on schedule. Because people who have irregular life patterns, those people who basically, let me say it differently. People who have jobs that rotate, night shift, day shift, or people like cabin attendants in airplanes who fly east-west, not north-south, or it works out. They have lots of time zone changes. They have much higher cancer rates. And you all know it. How many of you had jet lag? Jet lag. You know how you feel? Not too hot? It's lousy. Your system is out of rhythm. You're more at risk. Your immune system will get slightly suppressed over the long term. Okay? Do things on schedule. Do say your prayers or do whatever it is, mindfulness, meditation. It makes no difference. Have meaning. Be yourself. Which is the lucky part as we get older. I can wear green or purple or whatever. Enjoy what you do. Spend some time with your family. It's critical social support. And laugh a lot. And that reminds me of this one. Can you turn this one on? Click on it. Louder. You can do it with it. No. Check, how did you feel now? You feel more alert? You feel a bit more happy? Notice, that was like 30 seconds. All you had to do is fake the laugh. And I'll do a different way to look at, with cancer you want to look, and for healing, you want to look at a different perspective. So just look at this. What do you see? I'm sorry, I apologize for those. How many see a man and a woman like this? Put your hands up. I'm totally ashamed of you. You want to see it again? I can tell. Here's one dolphin. Here's another dolphin. Here's another dolphin. Here's another dolphin. So the question in cancer is, what can you do? Let me look at it that way, okay? Because it's really a shift in perspective. I can look at when I get a diagnosis, I might as well give up, it's hopeless. Or I can say, well, I don't know what the outcome will be. I am choosing to make that life, the quality of life, as important as possible. I can do some things in conjunction and collaboratively with my healthcare providers. Okay, remember, cancer, you have the risk, we all have a risk. It's the burden, which I'll call, these are all the factors that trigger cancer cells as such, the carcinogenic agents, etc. And we have our immune competence, how we can build our system. So I'll make a few comments on that. An old book, which was published during the Bush administration in the United States, which I cannot believe it was ever published by the government, by the federal government, basically says the following. It's estimated that 70% of all cancers are diet and environmentally related. They recommend eating organic food. That is the US government doing it. If you look at it, it's by NCI and NIH, National Institutes of Health. They recommend not wearing shoes in your house because you can't track in the dirt. Avoid a lot of the medical radiation. They recommend. It's a remarkable document that I would never have thought would have been published in the Bush era. But it's worthwhile to read. I'm not going to do it all. Just diet and carcinogenic. It is clear, the data is overwhelming, that if you have lots of fruits and veggies and nuts, you do better. If you want it, the summary is, if you eat sugars and refined processed and refined foods, you will increase your cancer risk. Simple. Excessive charred meat also increases your cancer risks. The data is quite good about that. Here is the data. This is in terms of rats. I know we're not rats. I hope. But we're mammals, and we react somewhat similarly. You can't do this study in humans easily, although the data is just the same. When you give the animals more glucose and give them insulin, their cancer rates increase radically. And what did we just get for the snack today? I have been very impressed, by the way, by the conference, truly. By the lunch, by the fruit for breakfast. But if I want to be really honest, those cakes, and I love them because once you give me a piece of sugar, I can't stop. I'm wired for it. However, if we really want a role model, then we wouldn't even have the rolls, which I love. The bread was delicious, and I ate 2 of them. But I really wouldn't want the white bread, because the white bread is the white processed flour, which acts in my body just like I've injected myself with sugar. That's all. You have a choice. It's not easy, but that's how, the bread goes. I chew it, the amylase in my mouth breaks up the simple, it's really some of the complex carbohydrates and sugars, and it goes right in. And it can increase your cancer risk. Now you have to balance that with joy and fun. So I figure I can have some of that stuff, and if I have a lot of fun, then I'm balanced off. I used to eat tons of junk food. Really. I love those little tiny round donuts. I don't know if you ever know those, I used to eat big bags of those. Now I almost eat no more junk food, but I eat high quality pastries. And very fewer, because I can't afford them. Okay? But the data is overwhelming of obesity and cancer. It's just there. And I'm not going to make it. And those are behavioral life patterns and cultural and familial patterns. Remember, this is Michelangelo. I don't know how many of you know that David was sent to the United States, at the Sistine Chapel. He was toured. Yes, they took it out of there. They went to he went to the United States for 6 months, and this is what happened. But life is more confused. I'm going to make a few comments. I did not cover most of it, I realize. Okay? I'm going to skip most of this, just eat healthy foods. The data is overwhelming. If you eat a Mediterranean diet with lots of olive oil, your cancer rate's significantly less than a controlled diet. Keep that in mind. I'm going to shoot. Having light at night is harmful. It will increase cancer rates. It's ironic, in hospitals, lights are always there for patients at night. It shouldn't be. I can show that. Walking will reduce cancer rates. Go ahead, get outside, enjoy it. I'm not going to do this. I'll do one experience of social support. Would you mind if I have about a few more minutes? Okay. I want to just get social support. Just for a moment, check how you feel. I'd like you to stand up. Could you just come up, one of you? Would you mind coming up, or somebody? Would you mind coming up? Quickly. You come up stage, do you mind? And for a moment, I'd like you to find a partner. Just find one other person you can be next to. You don't have to know them. Thank you. And what I'd like you to do is find the person's back like this. Just all of you do that. You can even do it. It's fun. And now just give the person a little massage. Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Shh. You can stop, it's okay. To be serious, again, check how is your mood? How is your energy level? Notice all we did is just a 30-second exercise. And playfulness. If I have more of this energy in my life, my immune system goes up. That sense of energy could be a metaphor for your immune system becoming more competent. Very quickly, because I realize I'm out of time, I want to show this one little video clip at the end. Stress is highly related to cancer. The more stress you have, the more can you get cancer, the more difficult is the recovery. Okay, I'm going to skip all that. There are tons of stress reduction techniques. I don't have time to deal with those. Some future workshop. But to learn them takes time. At least all of you can start doing the breathing or mindfulness meditation or taking lovely walks on the beach in the evening or looking upward at the sky. It's just great. There are many different ways. I won't get to that, okay? And positive emotions are great. I already did that. And finally, I want to end with this little video clip. If you can just turn the video clip on. As she looked at that video, sometimes she don't even know that the woman had only one arm. She only did have one arm. You get focused on the man with the one leg. Remember, she is a metaphor for me of anyone who faces trauma or illness. Here's a young woman in the prime of her life, lost her arm. She loved dance. She got unbelievably depressed. Because let's be honest, who would ever want to have a dancer with one arm? But then finally she moved out of that and realized, I want to go dancing. Nobody wanted to dance with her. She finally found a number of partners, eventually this partner, who had never danced before. And together they created beauty. Regardless where you are in your stage of life, you can look forward to creating that. And sometimes it means being very peaceful. But when one does that, it is remarkable what is possible. Thank you.